I launched the 94 election campaign in South Africa that Mandela won. We grew from 2 people to 170 people in 3 years across 6 countries, operating in 22 countries. We were one of 8 companies that Microsoft chose to sponsor to launch in the US. Through Microsoft, we launched in the US. We were one of 100 companies globally that was given access to enterprise ChatGPT before it was launched. One of the biggest things that we work with our companies.
Welcome to the DevReady podcast. Joining me on the DevReady podcast today, I have Grant Baker. Grant, thank you for taking the time to jump on the episode today.
Thanks, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be here. It's actually an honor after watching so many of your podcasts.
I feel special. Thank you for that. What I'll do, for those of you that are new, that haven't heard an episode before, Grant heard a couple, so this is not going to be new to him, but I don't actually know Grant. I haven't met him before. We've had a couple minutes before the call trying to get some technical issues sorted, so I'll let you take it away and explain who you are and what you do, and then I think we'll probably focus in on around startup world and AI, and we'll take it from there.
Cool. I'll keep it brief. As you can hear, South African by birth, but I've been in Australia for 17 years, love this country, and started my life in exactly where I would not expect, which was actually with politics and law. Fell in love with advertising, and the combination of politics and law meant I launched the 94 election campaign in South Africa that Mandela won. And I ran both election campaigns and grew into advertising, got married young. So suddenly I realized I needed to be serious. And at 29, I found myself the CEO of Leo Burnett, which was the $400 million business.
It's an advertising agency.
Global group.
I remember the name from those World's Best Commercials TV programs they used to show in the early 2000s.
I used to love it. It was bringing together of creativity and strategy and understanding the human truth about what people want, what they're looking for in life. And it was an amazing way of learning it. But started my own agency, which I did very differently after I left Leo's. Leo's was bought out by Dentsu, and my last 3 years I was an accountant. I wasn't in advertising, the CEO. I hated it. And started my own agency, but I started my business with a partner who owned the largest VC in Africa. And he would go in and fund these projects, and I would go in behind, and my agency had a central head office where we would do all the strat work and business strat, and I'm talking about detailed business strat. And then we had an ad agency, an events company, a digital agency, and a PR company. And the way we'd work is we wouldn't work on the traditional ways. It worked in the way we worked in KPIs. So we work at net, and if we hit your business targets, you paid us. And it was an unbelievably fantastic success story. We grew from 2 people to 170 people in 3 years across 6 countries, operating in 22 countries. And my wife decided that I was traveling too much and she wanted to be in Australia. So I moved across, looked at advertising, realized it wasn't really my thing in this market. Everyone has an opinion here where it's not strategically driven. And I moved into the tech space. So I created a platform for Land Rover called Land Rover Link, which runs globally, which runs all their dealer and distributor advertising. And somebody from Volvo who moved from Land Rover asked me to build it digitally, and we brought that across. At the same time, good friends of mine moved across with a small piece of SE tech. And 2013, we took the small piece of tech and we turned it into a $5 million startup, which we sold to Petstock. So next time you go to Petstock and you use their POS or their loyalty program or you use their whatever, it was all of our tech. At which point I decided that, I've lived all over the world. I've worked in Europe, I've worked in the US, worked in Africa, Australia. I fell in love with Adelaide, of all places, because we were doing a lot of work for the South Australian government, and I moved down here and moved down as managing director of the biggest agency here. Realized that after 20 years, I was not an employee, even though I was the managing director. and started Firehouse and BSA. And business BSA is Borough Street Analytics, which is probably ranked as the three most advanced technological MarTech platforms in the world at the moment. And Firehouse is our dev house. And it's based in Australia and Colombo, but it's all Australian owned. It's not an offshore team. Our teams are permanently employed by us. We employ around 80, 90 guys. We build very advanced AI platforms. We don't do websites. We don't do the basics. We do the stuff that most people go, what the hell are you talking about? And to give an idea, we were one of 8 companies that Microsoft chose to sponsor to launch in the US. And so through Microsoft, we launched in the US. We were one of 100 companies globally that was given access to enterprise ChatGPT before it was launched. We actually solved part of their numeracy challenge, which they paid us for. And we went from strength to strength. And then about a year ago, 6 months ago, I had a bit of a health scare and I went through a change. And I run 5 companies. So apart from Firehouse and BSA, I also own bizarrely not a feedlot, but it's all about land, but it's all about science, and a consulting firm, etc. But I got to a point where I decided that what gives me the greatest joy in life is actually helping people. And that's took me 50 years to learn that lesson. And I created a company called Civic Insights, and it's a small business, 3-4 people. And what we do is we work with founder-based companies, startups, etc. And we almost we find them money. So the purpose of Civic Insights has been designed to help startups, founders, or companies that have been established for maybe 5 or 10 years and are stuck in their way and never get around to the stuff they need to do. So many people are obsessed with working in the business, they forget to work on the business. And people that have brilliant concepts as startups don't necessarily understand the legal aspects or the commercial aspects or capital raising or funding or how what the need is around raising money and how you manage that so that you don't find yourself 3 months or 3 years later with 1% of a company that's worth $1 billion and someone's taking you for everything. And that's really where our focus is. And we do that in a number of ways. We do extensive R&D work, and we raise a lot of capital through that. We have exclusive agreements, although we're a small team. And we've only taken about 10, 15 clients, and we take on people that we believe in. We have exclusive agreements with Gallagher, which is the largest insurance company in the world. On credit insurance, we have agreements in place with financial specialists. We help people find safe notes, and if they are looking for investors, we do the commercial structuring, we do all of the work. We basically become a hidden board. And the way that it works is, on average, if we're charging, the idea is not to make money out of this. I've made my money. We charge a company $5,000 a month, $60,000 a year. And on average, we raise them anywhere between $300,000 to $1 million. $300,000 to $1 million.
Yep.
And that gives me joy because you get to see people take brilliant ideas and bring them to life. And that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
It's an interesting journey you've had. The biggest probably curveball out of all of it is when you ended up as an accountant for a while, but everything else sort of seems related and you're in tech. That's the one that seems like it's a bit out of left field.
When I say I was an accountant, it was because we were selling to the NSU. And every week I had to produce financial reports, and it drove me nuts. The only weird thing was because I was working in so much tech, when COVID started, I decided to do a master's in IT, which I did. And not a single person has ever asked me for my qualifications. And it was a waste of time. And the joke was that our tech was so advanced at the time that the university ended up doing the practical portion of the masters on our company. So it's been fun. I'm going to tell you, I've learned more through the tough times, and we've got a lot of stuff wrong. And I've learned that those lessons of where we didn't get it right is where I've learned the most. And those are the lessons that I feel empowered to teach and bring people through on, or to take a business that's become stagnant, and help them restructure and grow and flourish.
And it is generally through the tougher times when you learn those lessons, because that's when something's gone wrong. When you're doing something right, you've done the right thing, as far as you know, because it's worked.
It also teaches you resolve and resilience, and it's when things go wrong that you learn the lessons of how not to make those mistakes, because sometimes they're not obvious.
No, and generally that's when you're not working on the business, those are the mistakes that you learn that you need to resolve pretty quickly, and you need more systems, more structure, all along those lines. It's just there's always, as you grow, then you need another system now to manage at that new level of the business. You have more people, they need more layers, whatever it may be.
Well, it's interesting because one of the things that I do a lot of work with companies on is, and it's a fascinating process when you talk about growth, there's some amazing research around companies between the sizes of 1 to 15 people. Corridor talk is critical. 15 to 30 people, you need basic structures. 30 to 70, and the flow of information in the company needs to become formalized. And then 70 to 150, it changes again. And it's amazing how many times you see companies go from 4 or 5 guys to 100 guys, and they collapse. And the reason that they collapse is because they haven't put the information flow and structuring process in place that needs to go down to keep it efficient and to keep it robust. And it's one of those small things that if you don't get right, actually kills the business. And it's the reason we talk about .bomb, because it's not the ideas are bad. It's not that they can't find money. It's that they lose control of who's doing what. They lose cohesion of the project.
And I'm sure working with those startups that are just getting out there, most of them it is their first startup. And from what I've seen and experienced in talking to people in this podcast and having clients come through a business, it's generally in 2 camps. I see the startups, the people, and this probably explains why they go through those issues. Is you're very successful in a business and you think I've done well here, then you use that money and that knowledge to go start something else in a field that you've got no knowledge in. But because you think you're successful in one, you can apply those lessons, and generally some of them can apply, but it's not a direct analog. And then the other one is you're an expert in a certain industry or wherever you've been working, you're like the domain expert, and you think, all right, I've seen a flaw and I can go and do this, but you haven't been exposed to all the other facets of the business. So you don't understand all those problems.
Exactly, and you've hit it spot on. It's interesting because some companies, like Salesforce, the guy walked out of, Amazon or Google at the time, walked into a financier's office. He knew how to run a business, and they gave him $100 million, and Salesforce is what it is today. But he had the experience of running a company at all levels, where if you, someone that's sitting at a mid-corporate level, you're an engineer, you've come up with a great idea, you don't realize necessarily that, why you need a trust, why you need a company, why you need a PTY, what are the legal structures you need, what are the protective structures you need, what is the base on which you bring people on board, and how you do the setup of the company around building in equity pools and building in dilutive frameworks and all those kinds of things. And if it's not something you've experienced before, it's like reading, I don't know, Greek if you've never studied it before. And our job is just to guide. I mean, my first startup, We set it up as a trust. And we spent a lot of money. We built a really good business around it. And I wanted to do my first R&D claim, and wasn't aware that to do research and development claims in Australia, you need to be a PTY. They do not do R&D on trusts.
Yeah.
And it's a little thing like that. And separating your IP from your trading company, and those protections, yeah.
And I think that's why it's daunting, because there is a lot of detail that you don't get exposed to. So you are that engineer who's discovered a problem. You know everything about that problem, but then there's the finance, the HR, the systems, the processes, the marketing, the legals, the accounting. Everything is. You may have a general knowledge around top level because you see it peripherally through the organization, but you're not going to be exposed to that. And I think that's a lot of the learning, because being able to deliver and design the product is only one part of the whole package, really.
It's one of three parts, because the other part that we spend a lot of time on, although I talk about all the structural stuff around legal and financial and corporate and R&D, one of the biggest things that we work with our companies is we teach them communication and trust within the organizations, because it's often one of the biggest challenges they face. You're bringing someone else into your idea, into your baby. How do you share it? How do you learn to relate to people? How do you create safe work environments where people, in advertising, the one lesson that I learned that I brought into tech was when we used to brainstorm, the one word that was not allowed was, no, that's a crap idea. Because the number of crap ideas that I've seen turn into brilliant ideas, because people said, yeah, okay, that's a start, but what if we did this? And it goes, is around that trust and how you nourish people to share and to interact together. Strangely enough, there was an amazing piece of research done about, I think, 9-10 years ago, where they proved that the greatest inventions in technology of all time do not come from whiteboards. They come from people sitting around water coolers and fountains and having chats and discussing. And in all my businesses, one of our primary values, and we are a values-based organization, we believe in values and integrity. And if you don't have integrity in today's business, you will not survive. And integrity is tough, and we teach that as well. It's tough sometimes to walk away because it sounds so good, but you're selling your soul. But the point is, what we teach is that communication is innovation. And when you bring people together in a business that, I might be an accountant, I might be an engineer, I might be a software dev, I might be an account manager, and you're sitting, you're having lunch together, that's where the great thinking and ideas come from. And it's encouraging and nurturing that. So it's that combination of having the technological skill on the one side, 2, having the commercial structuring in place, but 3, building a business where you are able to bring people together that flourish. Because at the end of the day, it comes down to the people. I've seen brilliant technology fail, not because the technology is not great, it's because they couldn't work together. And it's an interesting challenge, and yeah.
That's probably the biggest challenge, I think, is having the right team and the right people around you.
I've got to tell you, as a throwaway comment, I can't do this in Australia, but in South Africa, we actually got our team to do a walk 20 meters through a fire pit of burning hot coals barefoot. And the reason we did it was to prove to them what they thought was impossible was possible. So what else they thought was impossible, what else could be possible? But it bound people together. And it was just a crazy idea. I wish I could do it here, but I'll probably end up in some...
You can't force them to do it, but people can voluntarily do it. I've heard of Anthony Robbins events where people have done that. But as you mentioned, having the right people and the right team is the most crucial thing. And if you can get people that can go along and understand and share values with you, then you'll actually get somewhere, because you've got people who care. And first and foremost, you have to have people who care. Otherwise, they're not going to do the job well. It's simple as that. Otherwise, yeah, you just get people that try and rip you off, try and skirt by and not do things. And the larger you get, like you mentioned in these bigger organizations earlier, you're not exposed to things, but you also get more people that are slacking off in between, and they can hide between other people. And then that's just going to eat into your business and your, how you feel about it in the culture as well.
I have two authors that I live and die by. They're my favorite, Simon Sinek and Malcolm Gladwell. And Simon Sinek, the concept of the why, he talks about the Wright brothers. And, when you pay someone, when someone works for you for a paycheck, it's one thing. But when someone believes in what you do, they believe in your why, they work for blood, sweat, and tears. And, when you're building startups, when you're building young companies, it's finding those people that relate to your why. And when you get that right, and it's always the first thing that I do with companies, by the way, is I take them through a very simple, it's a 6-7 hour process, where we start off with what we're at war with. We work out the what business are we in. So, for example, Absolute Vodka as a business is not in the business of vodka, it's in the business of fashion. I won't get into it. But we get to a single-minded promise that you make, that you never break. And it doesn't need to be a big thing. In McDonald's case, McDonald's promise, and I ran McDonald's for 3 years, so I can talk about this with certainly with confidence. There's this consistency. How many times do you travel somewhere in the world, and the first place when you're hungry, you go and eat, and you land, you go to Macca's. Why? Because there's 3 pickles, there's sauce, and there's a cardboard box, and that consistency.
Yeah.
And the final thing we end up with is the why. And the why is the reason you do something, and then you go into the how and the what. Whereas people go the other way around. They talk about we have this great new car, it does 40 liters to a gallon, it does da-da-da-da. Buy one? No. But when you talk about the fact that, our why is about, we want to change the world to make it a better place, to allow people to experience life at the fullest, and we do it because this is how we do it, it becomes compelling, and it brings people together. And that really is the heart for me, is and that's how you bring people together.
And that's the shared belief, shared values, and they're there for the journey.
Correct. You're not working for a paycheck. You're working for something that you believe in. It's the guy that stands outside the Apple door for 9 hours for the new iPhone, even though 3 days later you can walk in and just get one off the shelf.
Yeah, he's bought into something. He believes that it's important to him. It becomes important to him. I think that's the key thing.
And that's the fun thing about what I do. Me and my team, we 3 people, 4 people. Vanessa, my partner, is a PhD economist. Worked for Professor Sachs, Columbia University, was Richard Branson's right hand during the 9/11 crisis, BBC. But she's a sustainability specialist, and we are very big into sustainability. When I created BSA Water, and I started building that in 2020, and I said it's going to be about first-party data. And first-party data was going to become something critical. People laughed at me. And just at that time, GDPR was starting, and now it's one of the biggest crises that businesses have. The laws have changed, compliance laws, and I believe that the next thing that we're going to be seeing is sustainability. We've just done some work for a company in Europe around the European Union. Have just introduced 36 new laws of sustainability where companies can be held criminally liable for the delivery of their partners and the sustainable actions that they follow. In Australia, for the first time, and a lot of Australians don't know this, but with the new legislation on privacy, for the last year when Optus has a leak, their obligation is to send out a letter. But as of the 1st of Jan, an individual can hold you as a director criminally liable for misusing their data. And the cap that used to exist, that if you're an SME under $3 million, you're exempt, is gone. People don't know this stuff. I mean, Domino's was hit with a $2 million fine. And it's because you've got You're running Salesforce, you're running HubSpot, you're running 10 different systems. You're not bringing data together. It's not clean. It's a mess. And I think that what we're going to see in the next 3 years, sustainability is actually going to move onto the balance sheet as a prerequisite for projects. And in Europe, it already is starting. So that's kind of where we see the world moving to, and we're loving that, because we're busy helping a pharmaceutical company build a black fly soldier protein solution where we go to abattoirs, we get all the waste, and we throw in maggots, and the maggots turn into flies, and they eat all the waste, and then those flies turn into protein, and they actually take it, and it develops into apart from feeding fish and reusing it as animal protein, it's got side effects that, for example, in tropical conditions, will stop festering of wounds and blisters and fevers, and we're suddenly getting into this amazing stuff that has been around for thousands of years, and we've just ignored it because it's always been about, how big is your RAM? Who gives a shit? Is it sustainable? And it's all this stuff coming together now, and it's a really exciting time to be in business.
There's a lot of change, a lot of things that are happening, a lot of uncertainty everywhere, but there's a lot more opportunity for people to try things. And I don't think it's ever been easier to try and get into the market, probably, with an idea. Because now the barrier for entry as a startup, if you're building software especially, has been reduced so low that you can get a prototype now, not just a PowerPoint, very quickly, very easily, and do it yourself.
I got to tell you something which is scary for me. So with our MarTech platform, I've been the systems architect from day one, and we're a sprint, a proper sprint dev house. We run epics. We run full sprint process, and I would plan our epics 3-4 epics out, which is 9 to 12 months of what dev we would want to do. We do reviews, we do stand-ups, we do all those things. But with where tech is going and where Agentech is going specifically, I don't think people realize how fast things are going to change. Where I could 3 years ago, with 100% accuracy, know what I was building. Agentech changes that, and I don't think people have learned the difference between AI and Agentech. AI is artificial intelligence, where Agentech is knowledge. It's self-taught, it's training, it's learning, and we're busy. We're interesting because our tech consolidates data, but it also consolidates all the sales data, and it actually builds unified single view of every single customer and purchase patterns and intents and all kinds of things. Microsoft in 2022 bought Xandr for what, $1.8 billion, $2 billion, and Xandr as a DSP, which is a media platform where you buy programmatic advertising. Its primary holding was all of Netflix. If you wanted to put an ad in Netflix, you had to go through Xandr.
Yep.
On the 10th of May last year, they announced they're closing down Xandr, a company that made them $2.5 billion a year. And 10 days later, they launched their new Agentic model. It means that the speed at which things are moving now are so prolific. And the trick and the magic is, one, not to be fearful. And we talk about safe AI in a big way. Firehouse technology it's our primary focus. We say, if you're going to go into Agentic and into AI, it's not about reducing staff. It's about if you are a media company and you using our tools to do your media buying, and you had 10 media planners, you could cut down to 3. Rather than cutting down to 3, keep it at 8 and improve your customer service. Build those relationships, understand their business, and use it in that way. But the speed of the change is phenomenal. And I personally believe that any company that isn't investing now in agentic and in those platforms are in trouble. But the problem is you've got a board that says, hey, I watched something on Simon Bartlett's podcast on Director of a CEO, and he said you need to get into this stuff. And the board says, oh, we've got to go there, but they haven't planned and thought, what's the impact on our business? What does that mean to our staff? How do we bring it through? If we're going to use these tools, how do we use them? Where do we want to use them? And that planning is missing.
Yeah, they're just chasing shareholder value to make it look like they're doing something and keeping up, or they're making cuts to offset the lack of growth to keep profit margins up and say we're using AI as the cover story. I think that's where everything's going at the moment, really, if they're not planning.
I agree with you. It's a really fascinating space. I got to tell you, I'm glad I'm at this point in my career, not 22 anymore.
It's a lot of unknowns. I think even at this end of the career, you don't know where it's going to go.
You know, interestingly enough, Larry Ellison was invited to be a keynote speaker at the Harvard MBA post-graduation dinner about 15 years ago. And he stood up and he talked about the America's Cup and he talked about Oracle and all the rest. And he turned around and said, I'd like to congratulate the graduates in front of me. All of you in front of me are going to go out and earn the highest paid salaries payable in America today. Congratulations. Everyone cheered. And he said, for those of you that would rather pay salaries rather than earn them, leave now. And it's amazing. You look at the 10 biggest companies in the world. I mean, look, Bezos and Zuckerberg, they finished the undergrads, but Jobs, Gates, Ellison, all of them. A lot of people believe that universities and education train people to be employees. But it's amazing how that shift has happened, where you have to be in business for 30 years before you have intelligence. Sometimes it's not having the trappings that people have taught you that, oh, you can or you can't do this. Not knowing that stuff, you go, oh, damn, I'll just do it anyway. Where you're getting this amazing stuff coming through. And it's interesting because it ties into how AI and agentic and how technology and how knowledge, and there are 3 kinds of knowledge. There's what I know, there's what I know I don't know, and there's what I don't know. And those 3 are merging together in a very scary way, in a powerful way, not negatively. I can't wait to see how it's going to turn out. I've got 2 daughters. One is a director of an ad agency, the other is a genetic counselor. And Gates was asked, what would you study at university? And he said one of 2 things, either the most general thing in the world or something so specialized that, so my daughter being a genetic counselor, which is high in science, and my other daughter doing broad stuff studied the exact opposite. It's a challenging space for people coming through today.
It's challenging all around, I think, because you mentioned there the 3 types of knowledge. You do have an all-knowing assistant available 24/7, can answer almost anything. It's not creating new per se right now, but that's right now. Next week, there might be an update and all of a sudden it can create new, and it has created new in certain applications. There's a new way of calculating some maths theorem last year that they released with some new matrix multiplication. Like, there is things that it's doing, but there is nothing holding anyone back at the moment with not being able to find out information about something or how to move forward with it. And it's just learning about how to apply this now to business, where the key principles of business still apply. You still have to be profitable, you still have to have a good team, you still have to have processes. but everything else can almost get thrown out the window because you can try anything you want and you've got the ability to.
But that's what agentic is doing, you see. And this is what I was trying to say earlier. The difference between AI is artificial intelligence. It's artificial intelligence is effectively a set of information with a rules set around it that is determined and indeterminate. Whereas what agentic actually is learning new knowledge. It actually trains and teaches itself. You can almost talk about, if you want to get all creepy about it, this is Skynet come live. But yeah, it's that change.
And it's moving to that, and we're at the very early baby steps of what that true agentic self-learning is. It's still just statistical predictions with prompting at the moment in 99.9% of cases of what everyone's going to use.
I've got to tell you, that's another interesting term that you use. It's another thing we teach a lot of our younger companies, or companies that have been established and are stayed and just need a refresh, is that whole concept of the prompt economy. How to teach people to prompt. I cheat. So I use ChatGPT, I use Gemini, I use Claude. I've got about 4 or 5 different applications, and I'll create something in one, and I'll test it and I'll check it, and people don't actually read what produces half the time. Half the time it's crap, and you've got to correct it. But once I've done it in one, I then put it in the next one. I take it from, say, ChatGPT, and I stick it into Claude, I stick it in Gemini, and I say run the analysis again. And I'm using 2 AI forms to auto-correct each other to get to a correct or perfect, a more accurate solution. And it's fascinating. You should try it sometime.
I've done it in the past where I've said, Claude said this is the analysis from Claude back into ChatGPT. It's like, it makes some good points, but I disagree with this because of this. And look, you can pit them against each other.
I'm waiting for the guy that has the brains to bring it all together into a sync. And there are some baby new tools that have come out that do bring all the tools together. But the question there is how they're going to integrate into the platforms. But it's interesting times.
Definitely.
What we're seeing is, and this is what really, really gives me inspiration, is, with Civic Insights, is people are looking for that inspiration. They're willing to listen, and they're willing to learn, and they're willing to take on and try new things. They've heard about all this fandangled new stuff, and once we get the basics right in terms of the commercial structures and all that kind of stuff, and we get the R&D, or we get the safe notes, or we look at a lot of non-dilutive funding tools. We genuinely work really hard to find ways of finding people money that doesn't cost them equity. And you'll be amazed how much opportunity is out there. But once that's done, it's then going into that space of, the bravery of wanting to try these new things and to take on these new tools and adopting them. And it's really quite powerful because you see people's lives change. I'll give you a really bad example. My partner is Serbian, and she's an IVF specialist, and she's one of the best in her field, and she runs hospitals. And the thing that held her up the whole way through was that when we met first 35 years ago, she couldn't speak English, and she learned English. So writing documents and reports was always her fear. And 5-6 years ago, when we started getting into the AI stuff, and I started to teach her and show her, it changed. And she went from being a director to a CEO in the space of, a year, purely because she overcame that barrier of language, because she embraced it. And we see this more and more. And it's interesting, we see it from guys not just in their 20s and 30s, but guys in their 60s and 70s.
It's a change that everyone's embracing because they can see the value. And I think what everyone uses it for is it's effectively like the low value task. Writing the report is not a high value task. It has to be done. All the stuff your partner had to do before the report was written to put everything together and understand it and get it all there was the important bit. Leveraging the AI to help write it is, if you had a personal assistant doing it for you or a VA, would be the same thing. It's just that's automated now. And it's probably easier for her to prompt however she speaks to it than have to then explain everything to the nth degree. And she can go back and forth because there's a quicker iteration cycle between ChatGPT or whatever it may be and herself. That's the value I find is it's very quick to iterate an idea. It's not, I'll tell you something, an hour later you come back, and then I'll tell you something else, and then there's another 3 hours later. It's just how fast do you remember to go back to the tab that you had open?
I got to tell you, I have a rule for my staff. Email is not communication. Email is confirmation, because of exactly that. But what people forget is that, where ChatGPT can help you write that report, the real power of the report is the prompting of the analysis that you're looking for and the insights that you're looking for. And those insights come from experience. So I can ask ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini to write me a report in this podcast on what I could have done better or worse. But what it can't do is it can't go down and say, well, Grant, these are things that you maybe should have considered and talked about, and taking your own insight and knowledge and applying it and bringing it into that environment. And that's something that we really try to teach people, which is why when I say to you, one of the things we do is we teach people the prompt economy. It's not just on how to prompt to get an answer, but it's on how to prompt to actually bring your own knowledge and your own skill set and your own intelligence and your own experience and your gut feeling and your instinct and into that process, because that is the genesis of genius. People just must learn, not just pass it on.
And I think the failure of how people use these AI tools is they use it to just do the work rather than either brainstorm or get a quick draft and now add their expertise into it or their knowledge, as you mentioned. It's you have to put your layer onto it. Otherwise, it's just say the same thing anyone else can put on. And if everyone can do the same thing, then how are you going to stand out? And you're not going to make a difference.
It's a no-brainer. I mean, we helped build a system here in Australia called Amica for the South Australian government, which is a divorce program. So it costs about $30,000 minimum to get divorced on an uncontested divorce. Amica does everything. It does settlement, child division, property, the whole toot. But it follows a defined set of rules, a law, and it can't change. And in that environment, fantastic. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't want to be a lawyer right now, or an accountant for that matter, because anything that has a fixed, defined process, AI can replicate. But when it comes to things like health, or invention or interpersonal relationships or things that aren't tangible, that aren't defined by a set of rules or a set of laws or a set of defined outcomes, that's where the magic is that you need to bring into that process. And it can enrich it. But if you don't start with it, if you don't start by saying, the question, what's the basis of a healthy relationship? But then, we've all been through relationships. What has my experience been? What has worked for me? What has worked for my friends? And bringing that into it, it produces a completely different result, which means that you actually produce documents or you produce information or knowledge, that's useful. If it's turn and churn stuff, end of the financial year, I need a P&L, I need a balance sheet, I need to prep my R&D claims, I need to write up, easy. But when it comes to, I said to you, I have a feedlot, we do sheep. We do 15,000 sheep a month. And what we've done is, and we create what we call the Wagyu of lamb. And it's extraordinary. And the reason we've done it is our scientists, rather than saying this is how we think it can be better, is we studied how animals naturally behave. How, for example, they'll always eat at the lowest point and do their business at the lowest point, and they'll sleep at the highest point. So when we build their pens to replicate those surfaces. We separate what we call shy feeders from the bullies, so that we can get this. Our science grows a lamb from 29 to 60 kilos in about 7 weeks, which normally takes about 14. But it produces this marbling. But it's been achieved not through using technology to say, well, what should we do? But it's by actually saying, well, what do animals naturally do? What have they done for thousands of years? How do you take what is ingrained into them and make it better? The final piece of that strategy that I was talking about is I do archetypes. Once I've done the why. And the archetypes, and there's 12 archetypes, and it was invented by Carl Jung. And it's effectively the style of communication. And in the 80s, the film studios caught on to it. And there's the outlaw, there's the lover, there's the hero, etc. And if you think about movies, Star Wars, so that's, Luke Skywalker is the hero, Han Solo is the outlaw, Yoda is the sage, Chewbacca is the everyday guy, Princess Leia is the lover. It means that archetype describes an entire thing that doesn't need to be explained, but it comes from thousands of years of how we've translated our history from as word of mouth before we had books. And rather than try and build something new, we've taken something that human beings have had instilled and built into them over tens of thousands of years. And not just in one place, but those same 12 archetypes exist in South America, in China, in Africa. They haven't changed. And that's what I'm talking about, bringing that knowledge and richness and passion. And that's what I love doing when I work with these guys. Get their team right.
So that's the fun part, not just regurgitating what a computer has told you to say.
Absolutely.
Because you're actually exploring and you're actually doing something creative and meaningful.
I'll tell you the greatest secret that I learned. And the greatest secret that I learned is every time I went into business to make money, it failed. Money is an outcome. If you are going to a business, you need to do what you do because you're passionate and you love it, and it's something that you're obsessed and you want to do. You're going to spend 70% of your waking life in that role. I just could not imagine spending 70% of my day in something that I hate. And the importance of finding that passion and letting it grow and developing it is what makes people amazing. And what makes people inventive and creative and brave and gets them through situations that are theoretically impossible. I had a disease scare where I was told I wasn't going to survive 6-7 months ago. And I'm beating it. And I'm beating it because I believe it. And it's that kind of passion that I try to bring into companies and into their businesses. And it gives me such joy. It's wonderful.
And I think that shows through the conversation and how you've described everything. And it's great to hear that you're beating it and you're on the path forward. I think on that amazing piece of advice there, we're probably going to have to call it a quits for this episode as well. Just conscious of the time there, Grant. if anyone wants to reach out and find out more, and maybe we'll have to do another second parter to this as well to keep the conversation going. Before we do that, how can everyone find out more about you?
Easiest way is Civic Insights is so young that the website will only be up in 2 weeks' time. So go to LinkedIn, and it's Civic, CIVIQ, insights.com.au, or just look for Grant Baker on LinkedIn, and you'll find me.
And all of that will be in the show notes with the proper spelling.
I promise you, I do get back to people. Nothing irritates me more than people that don't. You know what? I learned a long time ago that the worst that it can cost me is half an hour on a cup of coffee, and I might meet someone interesting. And yeah, but for us, our passion is about helping companies. It's not about making money. And if you're a business out there and you are ready to take that next step and you need help, and we don't take on more than 10, 12 clients at a time because we want to do it properly, we would love to help.
I hope someone does reach out.
Anthony, what you're doing with this podcast is amazing. And I just want to say thank you to you and your gratitude, and to show my gratitude towards you. You sharing knowledge that people need. You know, it's half of what I've just been speaking about is what you do every day. And this is a tangible example of it. So congratulations and well done.
Appreciate that. I'm glad that what we do is cut through a little bit, because that was the whole point, is to share stories with people who have gone through the hardship, so then someone listening can just skip one step ahead.
Well, it's got to start somewhere.
You do. All right, well, Grant, it's been a pleasure speaking to you, and thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. It's been a real honor. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Welcome to the DevReady podcast.